Good morning.
It is.
Yes. It's wonderful co-creating. I can see how it's coming together with what you just shared and what I've got on this piece of paper.
Yes? Now you are dodging the microphone a bit. But.
Okay. It sounds very loud. Okay. When I wrote these out, I couldn't quite get my mind around the question, but the words kept coming, but the question didn't come. So I just wrote down words because I couldn't put the questions to the words. But the big thing is feelings. And healing crisis, knowing my feelings, honoring my feelings, allowing my feelings, stuffing my feelings, moving feelings unwanted out of my body, comforting foods for the feeling of that, and then watering down one's vibration, ego, and self-love. All of those sort of tie together, but I can't seem to put a question to the words. Are you able to help me with that?
Well, we think you are reaching for what we are all already talking about here today. Go through your list again.
Healing crisis. Knowing my feeling. Honoring my feeling.
Now, we've talked a great deal about paying attention to the way you feel. Mm-hmm. And we would say that you were at some level receiving part of what we were already going to talk about. In other words, you're recognizing that you have to pay attention to the way you feel. Mm-hmm. And the word stuffing feelings is interesting. It comes up from time to time. People worry about that we have been accused of encouraging people to stuff their feelings when we don't encourage them to beat the drum of where the feeling is. And people worry that if they do not acknowledge the feeling that they have, then will they be able to move from it? And what we are wanting to emphasize here is that when you identify the feeling that you are currently having with a deliberate intention to move from it or to find relief from it, now you are deliberately moving your emotions. And we think that what all of these words are that you are describing here, that you have written here, is what we are attempting to say when we are acknowledging that once you know where you are, and you know where you want to be, now by paying attention to the way you feel, you can acknowledge the movement that you are making.
Sometimes it's not always easy to tell what I'm feeling.
Well, we understand that, and by probing and poking around at it, you will feel it more. In other words, that's why the word stuffing the feelings is interesting, because what happens is you become so accustomed to the way you feel that you don't realize you feel that way. Let us put it to you this way. We would say that only a person who really beats a steady drum, in other words, choosing similar vibrational and therefore similar feeling thoughts, would not have any sense of whether a thought feels worse or better. In other words, if you're thinking so much the same thought over and over and over again, then you would not notice any difference in feeling. But we have to say to you that it would not matter how removed you are from your feeling or even how steadily negative you might be in your thought, and therefore resistant and feeling the negative emotions, you still can feel the difference in emotions because there is absolutely a vibrational range. And because you live in such a varied world, even focusing upon something that gives you a sense of distraction would give you a sense of relief. So there is no person, no matter how much emotion they've been stuffing, or no matter how unaware of what the emotional guidance means, there is no person who does not have a range in the way they feel, even on a daily basis. Now, we're exaggerating too far as we go from depression all the way to joy, because nobody has that kind of range in a day. But there is movement. In other words, there are things that feel worse than other things. And everyone has some movement in their emotions. And once you are aware that you do, and once you're aware that you do want to feel as good as you can feel, and once you make the correlation between the thoughts that you are choosing and the way that chosen thought feels, now there's no place that you can't go. Think about it. If my new mantra is, the drum I'm beating is, I'm going to reach for the best feeling thought that I have access to. Not the best feeling thought that anybody's ever thought or that I've ever thought, but the best feeling thought that I can find right now. And you deliberately find a thought that you notice feels a little bit better. And that continues to be your mantra. Can you see that you have to end up in a very good feeling place as long as you continue to make that statement? So one of the things that we do, it's a sort of game we play when someone's trying to figure out where they are feeling or how they are feeling. You say, sometimes I don't know how I feel. Well, we just poke around at it a little bit until you're able to define it. Something you want to talk about, and we'll show you how it works.
Well, I know that at the end of my day, I tend to eat food for the comfort of the food, to have a feeling about it. There's something I'm searching for with that particular action.
Well, what would you say so here you've come to visit with us and you are aware that you have this emotional range. Where would you say that you usually are? In other words, would you say that you are joyful or depressed?
Joyful.
Would you say that you are joyful or fearful?
Joyful.
Would you say you are and we agree, we're not trying to guide you. Would you say you are more often joyful or fearful?
Joyful.
Would you say you are more often joyful or overwhelmed?
Joyful.
Would you say you are more often joyful or hopeful? Now you see in other words, it's easy to tell that you're not depressed mostly, and it's easy to tell that you're not mostly fearful, and it's easy to, would you say you're more joyful or overwhelmed?
Joyful.
Now Esther would say joyful too, but overwhelmed she has to acknowledge is in the ballpark too sometimes, you see. And so you're sort of narrowing down your range, and that does not mean that you are never depressed, but you are usually not. You are more often joyful than not, but you can feel, and so when you say, I'm not really sure how I feel, well, if you were depressed, you'd know how you feel. Or if you were really angry, you'd know how you feel. So when you say, well, I'm not sure how I feel, well, that's not so bad. That's like saying, I'm not sure if the stove's even on. In other words, it's on so low, I'm not even sure if the stove is on. And we say, well, then it doesn't really matter. Lay on it. It won't be a problem. Or try to cook on it. It will be a problem, but. So what are we here to talk about?
Stuff covering up feelings that I don't want to feel. I feel is the whole thing that I'm here to talk about.
Well, here's the thing. We think that you can tell. We just don't. We think that you're just like most people. You just haven't taken the time to, because it hasn't seemed very important. Esther watched her sister, and Esther felt it somewhat too, when her father died. Her father died a few months ago. And Esther was surprised at the way it affected her. She thought she was better prepared, and she thought she knew enough about non-physical that it would not be such an unsettling experience for her. And she watched her sister become angry at almost everyone. Her sister, who has spent much more time with her father and was helping him even in his last weeks and months. And as Esther watched her sister, she realized that the anger that her sister was choosing, or the thoughts which evoked the anger, were actually improved thoughts for her sister. And while Esther's first impulse was to try to talk her sister out of her anger, she realized that the anger that she was choosing was an improvement for her. So rather than trying to talk her out of it, Esther sort of applauded her for it. When you have strong feelings, it's easier to feel the relief. So what kind of feelings are you having on a day-to-day basis that you are not knowing how you feel?
Well, I can recognize the joy and the bliss.
Yes.
But there's this level that is not either joy nor bliss or anger or fear.
Well, then that is a little bit of diffusion. In other words, not much focus either, because when you're really focused, your emotions kick up in a stronger way. So it may be that you are not focused so much. When Jerry and Esther went back to San Antonio, they were there for about a month. And they knew that on this trip back to San Antonio that they were going to get ready for the first event that they would hold in their new building. And the building has been finished for quite a while. All of the doors and windows and floors are in it. Everything about the building was finished, except the electricity had not been turned on. There was a sort of snag with the electrical company and some compliance with some things. And from the time that they began the building and the time that they finished the building, because it took them such a long time, different things had come into effect, and so they had to go back and make sure that they were in compliance. The rules had changed, in other words. And so the gardens were in, everything was ready to go, except no electricity in the building, and now it is getting closer and closer and closer and closer. And so Esther's desire for the building to be ready to use was peaking at a stronger place. In other words, when they weren't in Texas, she wasn't thinking much about it. And so the fact that the electricity had not been turned on was not a strong point of her desire. So the fact that it hadn't been turned on was not a strong point of her discord. And when they first returned to Texas, the fact that the electricity was not on in the building did not make Esther feel strong negative emotion, because there were still several days in between. But as the days got closer to the event, and they are down now 5 days before the event, and they are still being told that somebody is missing something and somebody is missing something, Esther began to feel her emotions getting stronger and stronger. Her negative emotion became very apparent to her, because the range between where she stood and where she wanted to be was more focused, and she clearly feel that she was not in the place that she wanted to be. In other words, always when your desire is more focused, the evidence of where you are vibrationally is there. Now, if we had said to Esther, if Esther had been sitting here as you are, and we had said to Esther, how do you feel about this electricity? If she had said and really meant, I feel belief, faith, confidence that they will turn it on before we need it, then Esther's emotional range would have been in this smooth, good-feeling place. But the fact of it was, because it had been going on for over a year, Esther did not believe that it was one more thing. Every time it would be the day they were going to turn it on. Oh no, now we need you to grant us this easement. And then it would be the day that they were going to turn it on. Oh no, now we need this. And so Esther's belief, the drum that she had been beating from the evidence that she had been focused upon, had her vibrating here where her desire needed to vibrate over here. So Esther sat down. She remembered an incident before, from many years before, when there were many droughts happening. And there was a severe drought happening in Texas. And Jerry and Esther had many acres that they were caring about, and too many acres to water with the watering system. And Esther recalled our discussion about the rain, as Esther sat on the porch, desperate, like most of the city, for some rain. And Esther had said to us, Abraham, can you bring the rain? And we said to Esther, why do you want the rain? And Esther began describing what the rain meant and how the rain would feel. And that was the place that she needed to get to. We said to her, you must find the feeling of what it will feel like when it rains, because right now your vibration is all about what it feels like when it's not raining and you want it to rain. And Esther, now, in her electricity drought, is remembering this water drought, and she was remembering the feeling that shifted in her on that day when she shifted from her awareness of there not being enough rain to her remembering and feeling what it felt like when it was raining. And Esther said to herself, this is what I need to do about this electricity. So she said to Jerry, I'm going to bring the electricity like I brought the rain. And she sat in her chair, and it took quite a while because her feeling about not having electricity was such a strong feeling.